So how's the जोश guys? अरे 25,000 के निफ्टी में इतना कम जोश कैसे हो सकता है? How's the जोश? अगर मैं बोलूंगा सेंसेक्स 1 लाख होने वाला है, 2 साल पहले तो बहुत जोश होता था, अब 1 लाख लगता है राउंड द कॉर्नर है. So last couple of years have been absolutely unbelievable, both in terms of return, the wealth creation, the performance. I think is extraordinary. But before I go forward, markets are forward, I need to take backward and talk about what an extraordinary journey it's been. And Amisha Ben is not focusing. Amisha Ben, I'm going to say good things about you. आप ध्यान ही नहीं दे रहे हो मेरे पे. No, I mean I've known. I mean it's just such a privilege to know, the team of PL from unknown to unforgettable. They've really left a mark, and this is just the beginning, as they say. So congratulations on this wonderful franchise what they've created. So over the next course of 60 minutes, what we will do is that we'll keep it very simple. Everybody wants to know क्या करने का, क्या लेने का. Everybody has a tip. Nilesh bhai बोलेंगे the only tip is sip. So we'll talk about what is the basic approach in this bull market and how should you really maximize in this bull market. So Nilesh bhai, they always say the first word and the last word is yours. Now I cannot change the tradition. So I have to start with you. What is your, and I'm going to keep today's discussion very simple. Everybody in a sense wants to perhaps hear on this very basic issue of where are markets headed in the short term, medium term and long term, and explain it to the audience here.
So thank you Amisha Ben for inviting us over here. And Nikunj bhai, ये है ना अमर अकबर एंथनी मार्केट है. कितने लोगों ने अमर अकबर एंथनी मूवी देखी है? जो लोगों ने नहीं देखी उससे एक ही रिक्वेस्ट है, प्लीज गो एंड वॉच दैट मूवी, दैट इज फार मोर एंटरटेनिंग देन दिस. तो निकुंज भाई अपने लिए तो एकदम फेवरेट मूवी थी, फुल एंटरटेनमेंट. तो अपना मार्केट भी अमर अकबर एंथनी मूवी है, फुल एंटरटेनमेंट है, फुल पैसा है. अभी उसमें एक गाना था, अनहोनी को होनी कर दे, होनी को अनहोनी, एक जगह पे जमा हो तीनों, अमर अकबर एंथनी. तो हमारी मार्केट में कुछ स्टॉक अमर भाई जैसे हैं, अपराइट पुलिस ऑफिसर, वैल्यू फॉलो करते हैं, तो फंडामेंटल भी अच्छे, वैल्यूएशन भी अच्छे है. तो अमर भाई पे निवेश करेंगे तो पैसा बनेगा. मार्केट में कुछ स्टॉक एंथनी भाई जैसे हैं. एंथनी भाई दिल का अच्छा था बट स्मगलिंग करता था, दारू का धंधा करता था. तो फंडामेंटल्स अच्छे हैं, दिल के अच्छे हैं, बट वैल्यूएशंस महंगे हैं. तो एंथनी भाई के स्टॉक में निवेश करके पैसा बनाना शायद मुश्किल होगा. मोमेंटम अच्छा है तो चल जाएगा, बट लॉन्ग टर्म में अमर भाई आगे बढ़ता है. मूवी में भी वही नतीजा था और जिंदगी में भी वही नतीजा रहेगा. सो अमर अकबर एंथनी मार्केट है, एंटरटेनमेंट मिलेगा, बट फोकस ऑन अमर भाई स्टॉक, नॉट ऑन एंथनी भाई स्टॉक.
क्या बात है. तो अमर अकबर एंथनी तीन यहाँ हैं बैठे हुए. कोइंसिडेंस है. चलो जी, आप कौन सी साइड में हो?
कौन से साइड पे हूँ? मैं तो इंडिया के साइड पे हूँ. और सबसे पहले बधाई पीएल परिवार को 80 साल की वर्षगांठ मना रहे हैं. तो आपका भी अमृतकाल है, आप भी बहुत अच्छा करें भारत की तरह. मैं बोला अमर अकबर एंथनी, तो शॉर्ट फॉर्म करोगे तो ट्रिपल ए. तो मेरे लिए तो इंडिया ट्रिपल ए कंट्री है, एज एन इकोनॉमी, एज एन इन्वेस्टेबल मार्केट. स्टैंडर्ड एंड पुअर चाहे जो बोले, मूडीज चाहे जो बोले, फिच चाहे जो बोले, मैं और नीलेश भाई हमेशा डिस्कस करते रहते हैं अगले 25, 50, 100 साल तक ट्रिपल ए कंट्री तो पूरे विश्व में यही है. इफ यू लुक एट द वर्ल्ड, आई मीन, विच इज जियोपॉलिटिकली realigning, a world which is demographically diverging, this is where the demographic dividend is. A world which is digitally redesigning, and that's where I think we are the most data rich country in the world. Which is deglobalizing, I think we are a country which can become the most trustworthy and reliable factory of the world, farm of the world, front office of the world. तो मुझे अच्छा लगता है, but I completely agree with Nilesh bhai. I think he articulated it very, very well in simple terms. आपने सबसे पहले पूछा how is the जोश, और बाजार में आपको अभी दूसरा भी पूछ, तो उसमें तो सब हाई सर ही बोलेंगे. अभी 80,000 जो भी लेवल है सेंसेक्स अभी तो सबका हाई है. बट अभी निकुंज भाई दूसरा क्वेश्चन पूछना बहुत जरूरी है, हाउ इज द होश. And that answer has to be balanced. How's the Josh high? Because India mein hai to Josh high hona hi chahiye. But how's the Hosh balanced? I think that is very important. I'm just repeating what Nilesh Bhai just mentioned. You need to keep in mind, I think there are pockets in the market where valuations have run far ahead of the fundamentals. You need to be careful. India will do exceedingly well. अगले 25-30 साल I think ये भारत का अमृत काल है. The economy will do very well. Corporates will do very well. And India is one of those few countries where you had an economy which continues to deliver well. You have a corporate sector which converts that growth into their revenues and profits. You have a capital market which delivers that or which converts that into market capitalization. And you have a mutual fund industry like ours who delivers that return to even an investor who just invests 500 rupees per month. That hasn't happened in many countries. China में भी जोश तो हाई है 20 साल से, लेकिन इंडेक्स खाली डबल हुआ है. हम 4-5 हजार से 80 हजार पे पहुंच गए. This is the difference between. That's why I said it's a AAA country in many ways, but this is one way. The people in capital market, people in India must know this. There are not many countries in the world who have done what we are doing, and that's why I feel very proud.
It's so nice to hear. अरे जोश से ज्यादा दिखा इतना अच्छा आंसर है. Come on guys, we should clap more for this kind of an audience. Josh, Hosh. What should be the very basic approach? It's like Navneet Bhai said, Josh is high, but Hosh नहीं खोना इस market में.
See, I think we are all beneficiaries of what has happened in the country last 15-20 years. And frankly, all of us have been eternal bulls. मेरे को किसने ट्वीट किया, बजट अच्छा हो खराब हो आप अच्छा ही बोलने वाले हो, कोविड हो तो भी अच्छा बोलोगे, बाजार अच्छा है तो भी अच्छा ही बोलोगे. But I think if you just look at it, Nikunj, last 20-25 years, whoever has kept balance, patience and positiveness, they have smiles on their face, they have good health and good wealth. I think that is what we have to just understand and just, I would say digest. Because, I think time hamara hai ya waqt hamara hai, that is basically the tagline, which is a fact. I think if you realize that, this is the time when India can really transform, then होश रखो, जोश रखो, जो भी रखो, I think पैसा आपका बनेगा. And it's a fact, lot of us, I think नीलेश भाई ने पूछा अमर अकबर एंथनी किसने लोगों ने देखा, लोगों ने हाथ भी उठाया. मैं बोला बाकी सब 50 साल के नीचे हैं. जिसने भी हाथ उठाया सब 50 साल के ऊपर है. But I think when a country grows, the growth is not for 10 years or 15 years. We have seen that growth continues for 25-30 years. Japan went through that cycle, Korea went through that cycle, China went through that cycle. I think India is only 50-60% in that cycle. And if we believe that, then this 3.7 is definitely going to be 7-10 trillion dollars. Everything is in our favor. We say that it's the 4D effect, democracy. कितने कंट्री में सेम लीडर 15 साल तक राज कर रहा है बस. अब देखो हर 3 महीने 6 महीने में प्राइम मिनिस्टर चेंज हो रहे हैं बड़ी बड़ी कंट्रियों में. India may we have a stable government. We have a very clear roadmap. There is consistency. We have demographics in our favor. We have domestic demand. Post-COVID, countries were struggling. Inflation आएगा क्या आएगा? What were we doing in India? We were celebrating weddings. We were celebrating birthdays. We were selling anniversaries. अभी भी आप टिकट बुक करा के देखो फ्लाइट की, होटल्स की. I think that is the power of domestic demand. And the last is the digital transformation. So I think if you believe in that, obviously there is a lot of room to go. But at any given point of time, we have all learned the hard way. Mistakes कर करके ऊपर आए हैं. I think जोश को हरदम कंट्रोल करना ही चाहिए. But थोड़ा बहुत तो जोश चाहिए, because उसके बिना even if you are in hosh and without josh, it's not going to happen. But I think a balanced approach. Most important thing is you have to believe that this country will continue to grow. Money will definitely be made. Every year you can't double your money. That has to be a realistic view you should have. I think if you are satisfied with decent returns, there is a lot of room.
So markets, they follow a cycle. At the peak of pessimism in COVID, nobody wanted to buy. Now, when there is peak of participation, nobody wants to sell. So, what would be your advice to our audience here and those who would be watching the show later online?
See, mean, it is very easy to say that, in pessimism we should buy, in optimism we should sell. But we are all human beings. God has given us all the characteristics, virtues. We also get fearful. और वो बड़ से बड़ा आदमी, छोटे से छोटा आदमी, सबको डर लगता है. ऐसा नहीं है कि नहीं लगता है. And there was a lot of uncertainty. See, we are lucky that COVID did not turn out as horrible as it could have been. So it's fine. But I think the main thing is that when you get convinced that this is not as bad as you were fearing, that is the time when you should change your view. So even if you would have not bought at the bottom in March 2020, but even if you would have bought in, say, August or September of 2020, by the time people were already talking about it not being as bad, I think you would have made a lot of return. And when you say today, I think one thing which is very clear, the market strength is, just simply perplexing, positively surprising. The reason is that most of us are cautious. अभी हम सब बोल रहे हैं भाई बाजार अच्छा है लेकिन थोड़ा आराम से. So, when everyone is cautious, yes, there is retail participation, but when everyone is so cautious, markets will never correct in a meaningful manner. The other thing is that everything else is in favor. Good macroeconomic, global markets are stabilizing. I think things are on a structural basis looking pretty positive. So maybe it will correct. I don't know, but ऐसा नहीं है that everyone is gone overboard. Except maybe in some pockets, in some segments, in story-based investing, maybe there is some euphoria. But otherwise, markets have been pretty reasonable.
We're a very large audience here, so let's do a dipstick with the audience. And folks, can you hear me at the back? So I'll ask you very basic questions and raise your hand. How many of you feel that markets will fall 15% from here? Whatever could be the reason, raise your hand. कौन डरा हुआ है? सुनील, कोई डरा हुआ नहीं यहाँ तो.
सर अभी ऐसा है ना निकुंज, आपने टाइम तो बोला नहीं उनको 15% कितने टाइम में. सी द अदर थिंग इज कोई डरा हुआ नहीं है, बट आप सबको पूछो वेदर दे वुड हैव लव टू हैव मोर इक्विटी देन व्हाट दे हैव टुडे. दैट यू शुड आस्क. हाउ मेनी पीपल वुड हैव लव टू हैव मोर इक्विटी देन व्हाट दे हैव टुडे? ये देखो. तो फिर so everyone is under invested, I think and again I'm not saying that एक 25 का 20 नहीं हो सकता है, 22 नहीं हो सकता है, 23 नहीं हो सकता है, that is the nature. I always say cardiogram है. There will always be ups and downs, but as long as it's ups and downs, it's equity market and it's alive. So I think the reason why we are seeing what we are seeing, and I'm admitting that we are pleasantly surprised by the strength. So, it can always happen, but I think at least when I meet large family offices, there is still huge underinvestment, and generally everyone is waiting for a correction to invest rather than to sell now and whatever you can call it.
Navneet, markets speak out when there is extreme euphoria, extreme participation, extreme froth in terms of valuation. So while we can look at the return and say, okay, mid caps are up 5 times, the index from the COVID low is up 4 times, there are defense stocks which are up 10 times. The grain of the truth here is participation is low. The grain of the truth here is that Indians own more gold and real estate, and equity as an asset class has a long, long way to go before we say that we've reached what could be called as a peak of participation.
गुड. एक तो हमेशा बहन आपने अच्छा काम किया, भरत भाई को बुलाया, बिकॉज ये हफ्ते गुरु पूर्णिमा थी, तो मेरे को भरत भाई से मिलने का मौका भी मिल गया. ऑन दी एक तो आपने वो पोल करवाया, वो कितने लोगों को लगता है बाजार गिरेगा, 15% पूछा, राइट? तो एक सर जॉन टेम्पल्टन का बहुत फेमस कोट है कि 10 engineers are telling you this is the way building or this bridge should be erected, that's the way that building should be erected. If 10 doctors are telling you that this is the disease, that means that is the disease, but that's not true in the market. 10 लोग आपको बोल रहे हैं ऐसा होगा, तो शायद ऐसा नहीं होगा. On the second thought about the participation, you are absolutely right. So while we can all celebrate, Nilesh Bhai and me, we speak at some or the other event related to our industry. Kalpen is here, my colleague Gopal is here as a fund manager. We speak at some or the other event, talk very positive about our industry, that last year, some of us added 2 lakh crores of equity AUM in 1.5 years. That was the total industry AUM 10 years back. प्रीता बेन 10 साल पहले टोटल इंडस्ट्री का AUM 2 लाख करोड़ था. इस साल एक दो AMCs है जिन्होंने 2 लाख करोड़ का इक्विटी AUM ऐड किया है. This is how we have grown. The total industry was 10 lakh crores. I mean, we just celebrated one single mutual fund celebrating 10 lakh crores of AUM. But वो सब करने के बाद we also know, at least we should know the reality that there are only 4.7 crore unique at pan level investors that mutual fund industry has got. So we have a long way to go. Even if you look at the people who are participating directly in the market, I'm told 17, 18 crores demat account, but at unique level, maybe 8, 9 crores, right? So still we have a long way to go. I mean, if you look at the total household balance sheet of India, it looks like this $10 trillion, 50% in real estate, 15% in gold, 15% bank deposits. Equity has just touched around 5% or so, and this number was 2.5%. So at 5% allocation in a country which will become a second, third largest economy in 25 years, but you won't have the retirement security of every citizen in the country if we don't increase greater equity participation of each and every Indian. That is very, very important. And I think we have a long way to go. We are at the very early stage of financialization of savings. मैं कई बार वो parallel देता हूँ. I'm sure Punita and a lot of people जो who have been serving the global investors, FPI investors can understand. 1980 में जो कैपिटल का फिडेलिटी का इन सब का साइज था वो आज हमारा साइज है. एंड यू कैन सी नेक्स्ट 40 इयर्स में अगर वो इकोनॉमी 2-3 ट्रिलियन से अगर 20-25 ट्रिलियन होके if there are managers who are managing hundreds of billions of dollars or few trillion dollars, you will see something similar in India.
So now I will encourage Bharat bhai to also join in, and ये नवनीत भाई के गुरु नहीं, हम सबके गुरु हैं. He's seen years and years of market cycle, ups and downs, twists and turns. बढ़ते मार्केट को देखा है, गिरते मार्केट को देखा है. तो अब बताइए भरत भाई, where do you think the risk reward ratio for the investor is stacked up in this market for next 3 to 5 years, based on your understanding of levels, valuations and earnings and the opportunity? What should investors expect? आपको माइक लेना पड़ेगा. दोनों.
Hello, is the voice coming through? First of all, apologies for getting late. Really sorry for that. Please pardon me. Rain or other things were no excuse. The delay was at mine, so apologies. As far as the risk-reward equation that Nikunj is talking about, personally, I feel we are at a cusp of one of the greatest opportunities this country has ever enjoyed. 6 years back, I wrote an article in Economic Times called The Golden Decade of India. So I received a lot of curious feedback about it. More polite were saying that this article is probably ahead of time. Little less polite were responses that it was a very presumptuous kind of framing of that article. If I have to put the same article today, I'll make only very modest modification. Instead of golden decade, I'll say golden decades of India. Singular to plural is the only change I would probably make it. There are multiple reasons why we have come the way we are today. And it is not an accidental one. Much like 8.2% GDP growth rate in March 24 quarter, when world is facing bleak kind of scenario, is not an accidental thing. It's not a chance that it just happened. That is the way our economy used to behave decades back. And that is the way our markets used to behave decades back. But we have come a long way. There are significantly 4-5 things I would like to mention. First and foremost, our economic management in the past was far more governed by politics and far less by economics. And that is something which is a deep change which has occurred in last few years, in particular, and probably 10 years in general, where economics is occupying center stage rather than the politics. Second, therefore, in the past, economic growth and therefore the market performance used to be patchy, where bull markets were short and bear markets were longer and far more painful one, very disruptive one. And typically, engagement of the investor participation also reflected that reality. Most people would think, bhagte bhut ki langot barabar, that before something runs away, you want to steal it and take the gains because you're never sure market will behave as you want it to after a while. And therefore, in that kind of a market, only way you could have beaten the market or you could have stayed ahead the market was by being very disciplined, bottom-up stock picker, where you pick out micro level good opportunities which will work well, irrespective of not very conducive or comfortable macro environment. Therefore, bottom up good investing and very calibrated, disciplined investing was the only way to make meaningful long term money. First time I would say micro beauty of India is combining with the macro elegance today, where macro is giving you predictability, durability, solidity, and therefore markets have become deeper and more engaged and more longer term. Third, therefore, it is not again accidental that the markets have been continuously showing a kind of a resilience because for the first time, markets and the participants have acquired confidence about the future. Therefore, engagement is not perfunctory, it is not superficial, it is deeper, and therefore it continues to remain committed. And best example of that is in 2022, the way foreigners sold. If it would have occurred at any other time in the past, market might have lost 35-40% of the market value, but it did not. Finally, the year still ended in 2022 with modest 3-4% gain in Nifty. Fourth, therefore, for the first time, you have seen deeper and longer term engagement of the retail. Without retail participating, markets become kind of a hollowed out. And no matter how much praise we all sing for each other, but purely institutional money doesn't make for a deep market. Institutional money suffers from its own perversities and its own challenges and all oddities. Retail participation gives a depth to the market. I recollect what Navneet was just now mentioning. In 80s, I remember of the household wealth, equities occupied about 14-15%. That number 4-5 years back came down to 4-4.5. Today, with the great activity and great participation of the retail, it is still below 6% household wealth, which is in equity. But the counterpoint that retail provides, plus the depth it adds to the market, plus long term tenacity it brings to the market, is invaluable. And finally, I would say the influence of the foreigners. For the first time, the counterpoint has emerged to the foreign money. Foreign money used to punch well above its really its above its weight, and traditionally it accounted for far bigger impact on the markets than it deserved to. If you look at last 3 years, foreigners have generally got everything wrong. They've got the direction of market wrong. And they've generally got selection of the businesses wrong. Their timing, which is not something that I in any case have any depth or capability about, but even that, if I have to opine, foreigners have got it wrong. And therefore, I would not regard the rise of retail is something which is typically maverick one, the way the phenomena of Reddit and phenomena in America post-COVID, where you thought that shallow retail was emerging. I don't believe that. I believe the retail has a role to play, and actually it is behaving fairly decently and intelligently in the way it is participating. Therefore, coming to all of these with the other factors, fundamental factors, if you look at cost of capital has declined, which is a deep impact on the valuation. Balance sheets are healthier than ever before. If you look at debt equity ratio has come down to half from 0.8 is to 1 5 years back, it is 0.4 is to 1. And thirdly, capital efficiency is risen in the system. Last year for the first time, India became the highest ROE country in the world, destaging America, which is a huge achievement over decades, which has finally occurred, where India has become number one return on equity country in the world. That now, when you link it with the valuation, with all that detailed background, I don't find that the valuations are outrageous at all. It is fashionable to talk about valuations time to time. It is important to talk about valuations in any case, whether fashionable or not. But I don't find valuations as aberrant or out of range or unreasonable. Certainly, markets were cheaper in 22, markets were cheaper in 23, markets were cheaper even 6, 7, 8 months back than what they are today. But it is not as if markets have become outrageously expensive. Index has risen, but it is not as if valuations have risen. If you look at 5 year earnings, earnings of the markets have grown higher than the index has risen. Therefore, valuations have not gone out of hand. Last point I'll make on that is the often people keep making expression about small cap, mid cap behavior, and not that in our investment portfolios we have really much of small cap or any meaningfully large percentage of mid cap. Yet I would say the constant opinionating that small cap are bubble, mid cap are likely to burst, and things are unreasonable, I don't even subscribe to that view. I think there is a newfound entrepreneurship, and entrepreneurship is at fore in some of the smaller and mid-sized businesses. These businesses have better access to capital and at a meaningful cost than ever before. And they are able to find an environment, ease of doing business more conducive so that traditional disadvantages they suffered are actually kind of getting addressed over a period of time. Pockets of excess, pockets of outrageousness can exist, but as a category, I don't believe that valuations are out of whack, whether in mid cap or small cap, even though mid cap probably are more expensive than the large cap, and smaller businesses are probably even more expensive, which is not the normal rule. But I think normal rules of the past are viewed with the prism of the past. I think country has evolved, and unless we are resilient, adaptable as investors, unless we recognize the changes, we will repeat the errors of the past while viewing the future, which is very different. So, short answer, I'm very comfortable. It is reasonable. It is not outrageous, and it's a healthy market to play.
Great. So a lot of headlines here. Markets are not in a euphoric zone. Valuations were cheaper yesterday, but they are not that expensive that you need to get worried about. And for those who are worried about bubble and trouble, I think that's clearly not there. Like Nilesh Bhai, they said that rather than timing the market, spend time in the market if you really want to create long-term wealth. So we've really set up the tone for the second part of this panel discussion, where first half we've established that the big picture is strong, all the ingredients are there, and India is moving in the right direction. Let me throw in one more ingredient, which is the global. It's not that India is at an all-time high, Nasdaq, Japan, other markets are also at an all-time high. While India is growing, America is in a trouble spot and Europe is the sick man of the world. What should one do when you know that world in a sense is topsy-turvy and global markets have also done well?
So निकुंज भाई, आपने वो बिरबल की कहानी पढ़ी होगी. अकबर राजा ने बिरबल को कहा कि एक लाइन को आप बड़ी करके दिखाओ छुए बगैर. तो बिरबल ने नीचे एक छोटी लाइन ड्रॉ की, ऊपर वाली लाइन अपने आप बड़ी हो गई. तो भगवान को मालूम है हम इंडियन हैं, 10 मैच जीतेंगे, वनडे इंटरनेशनल के फाइनल हार भी सकते हैं। तो इस बार उन्होंने अपना तो अच्छा किया है जैसा सबने बताया, बट बाकी लोगों की लाइन छोटी कर दी है। तो रशिया को कहा कि तू यूक्रेन पे धावा बोल दे, अब ग्लोबल इन्वेस्टर वहां पे जाने से बंद हो गए। रशियन इकोनॉमी अच्छा कर रही है बट कोई निवेश नहीं करता। ब्राजील अच्छा भरा चल रहा था तो उसे कम्युनिस्ट सरकार दे दी, अब लोग डालते डरते हैं। साउथ अफ्रीका एनीवे नीचे जा रहा था तो उसे एक धक्का मार दिया, ऐसी सरकार मिली और जोर से गिरेगी। चाइना अच्छा कर रहा था तो उसे ताइवान की माला जपने को बोल दिया। तो हमारी लाइन बड़ी दिख रही है बिकॉज बाकी लोग सेल्फ गोल कर रहे हैं। तो यस, दुनिया को देखिए, जरूर देखिए, बट ये देखिए कि ये क्या गलती कर रहे हैं, और जब तक वो गलती हम नहीं करेंगे तब तक अपनी गाड़ी चलती रहनी चाहिए।
So, what should one expect for in terms of how last 5 years have moved versus how next 5 years would move? Last 5 years was about COVID recovery, emergence of new themes, manufacturing coming big. What, to your mind, are the trends or extension of trends which will continue for next 3 to 5 years? Market में क्या हो सकता है आपके हिसाब से?
सो
अरे बहुत टाइम है, टीवी पर नहीं हूँ।
नहीं, मैं बोलूं नवनीत बोले, बात एक ही करने वाले हैं। तो एक ये जो बजट में हमने देखा कि देयर इज फोकस ऑन फिस्कल प्रूडेंस इन टॉप 20 इकोनॉमीज ऑफ द वर्ल्ड। शायद हम एकमात्र कंट्री ऐसी है जो अपनी प्राइमरी डेफिसिट, फिस्कल डेफिसिट माइनस इंटरेस्ट को नियर जीरो नेक्स्ट 2-3 साल में लेके आएंगे। एंड अगर फाइनेंस मिनिस्टर चाहती तो इस साल में भी कर सकते थे बाय डूइंग डाइवेस्टमेंट। डाइवेस्टमेंट का नंबर 50,000 करोड़ है। जब गवर्नमेंट की सरकारी कंपनी की ओनरशिप 8-10 लाख करोड़ थी तब भी हम 50,000 करोड़ बेचते थे, और आज 40 लाख करोड़ है तब भी 50,000 करोड़ बेच रहे हैं। तो इसी साल हम प्राइमरी डेफिसिट जीरो कर देते, जो दुनिया की कोई मेजर इकोनॉमी नहीं कर रही है। सो अगर ये फिस्कल प्रूडेंस का पाथ चलता रहा तो हो सकता है हमारी क्रेडिट रेटिंग अपग्रेड हो जाए। नाउ निकुंज भाई, हम उन लोगों के पास से न्याय की आशा रख रहे हैं जो नाम में बोले हम मूडी है और हमारे स्टैंडर्ड पुअर है। बट सुबह का बुला शाम को घर लौट आएगा। तो इफ माय रेटिंग गेट्स अपग्रेडेड, माय कॉस्ट ऑफ कैपिटल कम्स डाउन, एंड कॉस्ट ऑफ कैपिटल कम्स डाउन तो मार्केट की वैल्यूएशन को बढ़ावा मिलेगा। और जैसा भरत भाई ने बताया कि कंपनीज अच्छा कर रही है, भगवान ऊपर से हमारा ध्यान रख रहा है, तो गाड़ी तो चलती रहेगी। अब आप अमर भाई स्टॉक लेके बैठ जाइए तो पैसा बनेगा। एंथनी भाई में शायद शॉर्ट टर्म में ज्यादा बनेगा, बाद में थोड़ा कम बनेगा।
हाँ जी।
Now, I was saying, you talked about the world and India. So, despite whatever was happening in the world and whatever was happening in the world, Sanjay is here, Amisha Ben, all of them have served like foreign portfolio investors for last 32 years when they started investing. Out of the last 32 years, correct me, I think almost 24 or 25 years they have been net buyers of Indian equities, except 6 or 7 calendar year or financial year, whichever way you look at it, maybe 6 or 7 at the most, where they've been a net seller of Indian equities. And the reason were twofold. Number one, the stable macro environment and the growth potential from a very low base. I mean, somebody talked about the democracy that we have, the demographics that we have, and the overall bigger picture that this is a country which will continue to deliver growth. The second important reason was, which Bharat Bhai I think touched upon, is so there was a top-down opportunity of India. The second reason foreigners have always been a buyer of Indian equities is the bottom-up opportunity of India. You don't get this kind of breadth of the market in most of the other emerging markets. You don't get that in some of the developed markets also. I mean, you go to Taiwan, like below Taiwan semiconductor and few stock, there is nothing. In Korea, beyond like few stock, there is hardly any market. Forget about like Russia. I mean, even when Russia was investable, Nilesh bhai talked about Rusal, Gazprom, few of the like Sberbank, तीन चार उसके बाद कोई market नहीं है. आप ब्राजील जाते हो, Petrobras, few banks and all that, बहुत छोटा सा market है. Relative to that, India में regardless of the market cycles, I mean your financials, your like in consumer, in industrials and utilities, the breadth of the market that you get, technology, you get like so many plays in the country with great quality of management, governance, growth, capital efficiency, disclosure standards, audit standards, regulation, all of that. So the top down opportunity, bottom up opportunity. I feel more positive for the next 10-20 years from foreign portfolio investors perspective. ये छोटा time का valuation आगे पीछे छोड़ दीजिए, which is the retail presence now. Because what the retail presence is doing is bringing down the volatility of the market on a structural basis. Now our SIP per month is 21,000 crores per month. 21,000 into 12. Suppose यहाँ से कुछ भी नहीं बढ़ता है, ये 21,000 ही रहता है. अभी आपका वेल्थ बंद कर देता है बेचना, नहीं SIP लाना, ये 21,000 करोड़ आती रहती है. Into 12 is equal to $30 billion. $30 billion foreigners have never invested in any single year in India. जब भी बहुत बड़ी तेजी भी हुई तब भी उन्होंने $30 billion कभी नहीं लगाया. This itself is 30, and then you have NPS, then you have EPFO, then you have like PF, insurance and all of that. This money every day is so large. What it will do is provide more stability to the market. मैं ऐसा नहीं बोल रहा हूँ साइकिल नहीं होंगे. आपने 15% वाला कराया, हो सकता है कभी भी correction. But this structural flow of the retail money which has just started. So what happens if you are a global asset allocator on a risk return framework, the way they look at the volatility is structurally low. So on a risk adjusted basis, the market looks or the asset class becomes even more appealing. And that's why I think if you take a longer term call, I think the participation from global investors is only going to increase. So what will happen? I mean, the locals will become bigger and bigger. We were very tiny relative to the overall market. Foreigners owned, I think, peak में 24%, नीलेश भाई, 22-23%, डिपेंडिंग ऑन आप BSE 500 देख रहे हो या क्या देख रहे हो, वो अभी शायद 17% समथिंग हो गया और हमारा पार्टिसिपेशन बढ़ता जा रहा है, वो बढ़ेगा. But I think वो पैसा in absolute terms will be bigger than what we have.
No, the number is the DI
And the
holding
another
is
thing
higher
that will
also.
happen is lot of like आपने बोला सब लोग खरीद रहे हैं, ऐसा कभी होता नहीं है. एक भी ट्रेड हो रहा है तो कोई तो बेच रहा है सामने डेफिनेटली. बट स्ट्रक्चरली क्या होगा, आई थिंक सप्लाई आएगी बहुत. मतलब सैकड़ों कंपनियां लिस्ट होनी बाकी है जिनमें आज पी या वीसी ने इन्वेस्ट किया है. There are several promoters who will raise money for actual capex, which we haven't seen for some time. Government divestment he talked about. I mean, government can raise so much of money. One like divesting a stake in the current set of companies which are listed, bringing in some of the other companies, and then the asset monetization that the government has. I think वो absorb कर लेगा ये liquidity को. ये थोड़ा सा gap है. उसके बाद में market will become even bigger and even deeper.
Great.
You know,
Yeah,
Navneet,
yeah.
just to add to Navneet's point, one of the other reasons for improving valuation for India is a structural decline in volatility. Foreign money was talking much more than it deserved to in terms of the impact. And therefore, the structural decline in volatility itself is a source of greater confidence of future and therefore greater valuation today. Because any uncertainty you counter with raising the discount rate for the future, which I think systemically is declining, apart from actual cost of capital declining. And he touched upon the diversity of the businesses and the breadth and length. In fact, even America doesn't have the same diversity of the businesses that India has got. Across the length and breadth of variety of businesses. Look at American market in last 10 years. While it has done well, remove the Fab 7, your Nvidia and Microsoft and Apple and Google, then you really are left with no returns over a 10-year period in American market. That shows how vulnerable that market and situation is held hostage to limited number of businesses, which is not the case in India.
इंडिया स्टोरी जैसे ग्रो कर रहा है.
वो बहुत सारा लिक्विडिटी आ गया, सब लोग कंप्लेन.
भाई सुनील सिंघानिया जब पब्लिक फोरम पे आते हैं लोग एक ही चीज जानना चाहते हैं. आप भी जानते हो सवाल क्या होगा. क्या सवाल पूछना चाहिए जब सुनील सिंघानिया आते हैं? What is the next big theme, idea, or a trend which you are betting on? I mean, at heart, you are a stock picker. I respect your compliance. We will not talk stocks, but give us where you think that there is scope for earnings upgrade, P upgrade, and where the macros are going to be favoring a strong, economic growth.
So, first of all, just to 2 minutes take the conversation of what was going on. See, one thing which we sometimes don't realize, we feel that a stock is expensive. और हमारे साथ भी बहुत होता है because you are very value conscious. खरीदा ही नहीं जाता है महंगा. But when you see over a period of 3, 4, 5 years, the company is just transformed. और फिर लगता है अरे 4 साल पहले इतना सस्ता था. I think even from a foreigner's perspective, they might be thinking that China is 9p, 10p and India is 17p. खाली P basis पे अगर हम इन्वेस्ट करते तो फिर हमारी जरूरत ही नहीं होती थी. You just have a mathematical exercise कि जो सबसे सस्ता P है वो country खरीद लो. But I can tell you, your wealth would have been 10% of what it is today if you would have followed that. So maybe after 4-5 years they will realize अरे 3.7 का 7 हो गया. It was such a golden opportunity to invest. But anyway, I think coming to your questions, and I've said this, I and Navneet were even yesterday on a panel. See, the sectors which look the best in terms of profit growth sometimes don't turn out to be the best in terms of equity market returns, and vice versa. A clear example is 2023 or financial year 24, the sector which performed the best in terms of profits, growth, balance sheet, everything was private sector banks. But no private sector bank, at least the larger ones, have given any return last 1 year. And on the other hand, IT had the worst year since Lehman. Growth was non-existent. The guidance given was 2%, 3% per annum, and still it turned out to be a very decent sector. So I think a lot of times, your question that where there will be earnings upgrade, maybe sectors where there's earnings upgrade, the returns might not be there. But having said that, I completely agree that India is a country driven by entrepreneurs. We always say this, that India grows because of entrepreneurs and despite the government in a lot of sectors. And I think that is basically the reason why it keeps on growing at 6.5%, 7% when the world is growing at 0%. And obviously, I think that opens up opportunity. There are so many new sectors which have come up. Suddenly, the likes of Zomato and Swiggy did not exist. That business did not exist. Obviously, we don't have investment there, but I'm just giving you a perspective. There are so many other businesses which just did not exist 5-10 years back, and now they are so large. So I think there is opportunity across. Having said that, to answer your question directly, I still believe that financials have a lot of room to grow. I think pharma has a lot of room to grow. Stocks are not expensive relative to the market. Companies are very clean. There is a natural advantage which a lot of these companies have. Sizes are such that now they can spend money on innovation. I think one thing where India has lagged massively, including IT services company and pharma, that we never had the guts to invest in creating products like Netflix or Meta or so many other products. Why couldn't some Indian company could have tried? If you're making $3, $4, $5 billion of net profit, you had capital to put it at risk. Maybe now things will change. Even in pharma, why can't we have innovative product coming out of it? We are always trying to copy and do the first to file and generic version of it. Why can't we have innovative products? I think that will change now, because earlier, our kids used to go abroad to settle there. Now they're going abroad to study and they're coming back with innovation. They're coming back with technology. They're coming back with innovation. And now we have the capital to give it to them that, le beta, chal, जी ले तेरी जिंदगी, ये ले 50-100 crore और कर innovation.
You're giving us 100 crores.
आ ही नहीं रहा है तो क्या करूं अभी? But what I'm trying to tell you is that, the next 10, 15, 20 years can be a very different, India and different growth. I know I'm just skirting your question round and round, but actually there will be very, very new types of companies and sectors. And that's why I said, don't get swayed कि ये sector अच्छा है कि वो sector अच्छा है. I think just focus on having, positive view on the economy. Keep your eyes, ears open, mouth shut, or invest करते रहो.
Bharat bhai, I think we've really established, and thanks to everybody here, everybody on the panel, that the big picture, valuation support, the size of the opportunity, like you always say, the size of the pond is great. But it's a rarity for all of us to interact with you. You hardly come on public forums now. Everybody really wants to understand that where are you finding those not insights but insights? The insights where, to your mind, the next wealth creation cycle will start, it has started, or it will continue.
Say the last part again.
The wealth creation cycle has started, or it will continue.
No, we are, as I right at the beginning mentioned, we are at a cusp of one of the greatest transformational revolutions brewing before our own eyes. And therefore, we have just begun. Of course, nothing in investing is mathematical and fully predicated in a completely kind of a gospel truth certainty. There are, of course, risk factors and challenges that we have to be mindful of. What has got us here is a certain sense of purpose and certain sense of leadership and certain sense of reforms and changes that have been implemented and have been shown commitment to. If these continue, then the opportunities continue. But I think it is flowering of the opportunities. Navneet talked about the sheer diversity and the breadth of the businesses available in India. And truly, I think for the first time, it is now coming to fore in a much bigger way. Think of about 15 years back, under the attack of Chinese dumping, this country's manufacturing was in a state of tatters, where it would have simply been, and it was, I think, systematically getting hollowed out by China at that point of time. I don't know how, but any and everything was imported in the country at any kind of cost. And therefore, once you destroy profitability of industry and manufacturing, after a few years of struggle, the units will die. You finish off the industry and manufacturing, and the country becomes parasitical, dependent on the outside forces. I think cynically, that probably was something which was brewing around for a length of time. Finally, we are now seeing a revival of manufacturing, revival of industry, your capital goods, your defense, your railway ecosystem, your logistics, your warehousing, energy transition, greening of the energy equipment, energy financing, all host of opportunities where India should have been leading from the front for a long time, but I'm glad at least finally it is coming to the fore. Even the circular part of economy, there are many areas where India is occupying leadership and where the opportunities are lying, where meaningful younger entrepreneurs and younger enterprises are emerging to take benefit of that compared to some of the more established businesses which should have done it actually earlier. Therefore, I find opportunities galore. But in investing, people find it very sexy to predict a lot of things and get a intellectual gratification in making very grand sounding forecasts. I think rather than making grand forecasts and trying to make very intelligent sounding conjectures of the future, I would prefer to watch as things evolve and try to adapt to the emergent reality rather than try to make very great meaning out of all the reality that may be coming about. Not that you don't have any view about it, but you don't want to get carried away by your own opinion about what is likely to occur. And therefore, willy nilly, you become committed to it in a wrong way. And if you turn out to be wrong in your forecast, you still become enslaved to that forecast and make mistakes. Therefore, my feeling will be opportunities are great. It is across the sectors. Many more new things will emerge rather than the ones that we see today. rising boat, rising economy creates many multiple opportunities. Some we can visualize, many will figure out as they happen. And therefore, more than most intelligent forecast about the future, greater ability to adjust and adapt to the future as it emerges will be a greater skill to have.
Great point. So, Nilesh bhai, again, a question on similar lines, but I'll phrase it slightly differently for the benefit of the audience here. Can you divide the market into, let's say, three parts: good and cheap, good but expensive, and expensive and not growing, or will not grow?
So Nikunj bhai, we go and meet global investors, asking them to invest in our fund. So नॉर्मल अपनी आदत है भाई इंडिया लुक्स एक्सपेंसिव ऑन अ 1 ईयर बेसिस. उस बंदे ने मुझे कहा नीलेश भाई आपका नजरिया बदलिए. इंडिया इज द चीपेस्ट इमर्जिंग मार्केट ऑन अ 5 ईयर बेसिस because your earnings growth will be far better than other countries. So ये good, bad, ugly की bucket is depending upon your time horizon.
Let's say 3 to 5 years. Let me define it.
So essentially, any company who is able to adopt for the future, that is good. Any company who is going to behave like dinosaur, that is bad. एक एग्जाम्पल देता हूं निकुंज भाई. As of today, about 60-70 lakh Indians are employed in application space. Programming करते हैं, maintain करते हैं, develop करते हैं. But there are fears that artificial intelligence will come and replicate programming. Now, if that happens, what happens to the 60-70 lakh people? If we look at the transcripts of companies like Apple and Google and Tesla, they are focusing on robotics. They believe 90% of their revenue in future will come from robotics and not from what they are doing right now. Now, if that's the future, I'll have to invest in companies which are participating in that future. And as Sunil mentioned, we haven't invested in future as much as we should have. So please focus on companies which are preparing for the future, which are shaping the future. Companies which behave like dinosaur, they are all bad and ugly. Companies which is shaping future, they are all good and investable.
One more follow-up question, which is that
मैं इजी
हाँ
कर
जी, हाँ
दूं
जी.
क्या? गोपाल इज सिटिंग हियर, सो बोल रहा हूँ एचडीएफसी मल्टी कैप फंड. सो उसमें सब है, लार्ज कैप भी है, मिड कैप भी है, स्मॉल कैप भी है, क्वालिटी भी है, ग्रोथ भी है, वैल्यू भी है, सब हो जाता है इजी. सो वापस मत पूछना ऐसा.
चलो आप बोल दो, फिर आप बोलेगे कोटक के बारे में बोलने नहीं दिया, आप भी बोल दो.
सो ना वो तो ऑटोमेटिक है. You know, interestingly, this whole debate about the large, mid, and small, and I'll just say, Nikunj, you'll remember a couple of years back, we used to have the same thing, and there are people who would say large cap versus small and mid cap. And I used to say that, and just alluding to what Nilesh Bhai just mentioned about the disruptions that are there in the world, geopolitical disruptions, I mean the technological disruptions, the big changes in the consumer behavior. This generation is very different. The way they walk, the way they think, the way they want to live, many things, that's a disruption. The ease of doing business is actually good for some, but not so good for many. So several, and the logistics has changed, as Bharat Bhai mentioned. That also changes many business models dramatically. And I used to say that few years back, and of course now the valuations are on the other side, that we are entering a world where agility and nimbleness will trade at substantial premium to size and stability. Agility and nimbleness will trade at a substantial premium to size and stability, which is precisely we have seen. But as like every cycle, this get like little overextended. I think there's a lot of froth in some of the small and mid caps you need to get worried about. But the size of opportunity is so large. And just digressing for a minute, because हम चार चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट बैठे हैं इधर, एंड मैं देखा अभी नीलेश विक्रम से बैठे हैं, पास प्रेसिडेंट है आईसीआई की. हम सब लोग थे एफएम के साथ few weeks back in an interesting event. And you know how to arouse our ambition. She said something so interesting. She said that कि आप सब चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट इतने बैठे हो यहाँ पे, why there is no big four from India? And this is like profound, isn't it? Like we never thought about it, that why has India become so large? You have like one of the best, I think, the talent here on accounting. हम पूरी दुनिया के
गलत
फंड
बोला
फंड
उन्होंने, गलत
अकाउंटिंग
बोला।
यहाँ
उनको पूछना तो इतने फंड मैनेजर्स बैठे, फिडेलिटी और वैनगार्ड क्यों नहीं आया यहाँ से?
नहीं, वो तो बन जाएंगे हम। वो तो आई टोल्ड यू दैट 1980 वाला, 1980 में ये सब लोग 50-60 बिलियन डॉलर्स थे, राइट? फिडेलिटी कैपिटल, ऑल ऑफ दीज गाइस, ब्लैक रॉक वाज येट टू बी बॉर्न, ब्लैकस्टोन वाज लाइक जस्ट टेकिंग बर्थ, एंड दे आर लाइक ट्रिलियंस ऑफ डॉलर्स टुडे। तो वो तो हम हो जाएंगे, दैट इज गिवन इन 2047, 50, whatever. If we are 20-25 trillion dollars of economy, which is, let's say, very close to current size of US, asset managers will be of that size, wealth managers will be of that size. अभी लाइक बहुत लोग बोलते हैं यार आजकल बहुत हो गए, लाइक सुनील भाई आपसे, भरत भाई से इंस्पिरेशन लेके लॉट ऑफ पीपल हैव स्टार्टेड ऑन देयर ओन एंड से यार बहुत हो गए, अभी तो बुल मार्केट फिनोमेना। ऐसे मैं हमेशा सोचता था, कभी भी जाते थे, बॉस्टन जाओ आप, न्यूयॉर्क जाओ, सिंगापुर जाओ, लंदन जाओ, तो यार एक बिल्डिंग में इतने एसेट मैनेजर्स हैं, इतने वेल्थ मैनेजर्स हैं। इंडिया में तो लाइक इतने से यार ऐसा कैसे हो सकता है? जब हम 3-4-5 ट्रिलियन डॉलर की इकॉनमी बनेंगे, जब 10 ट्रिलियन डॉलर की इकॉनमी बनेंगे, तो लॉजिकली यहाँ पे भी तो इतना होना चाहिए ना, मार्केट इतना बड़ा है, देयर आर थाउजेंड्स ऑफ कंपनीज, एंड देन प्राइवेट मार्केट देखिए आप, वी हैव जस्ट स्टार्टेड एन एफओएफ इन्वेस्टिंग इन पीई एंड वीसी फंड। I mean, the amount of, the kind of entrepreneurship that you see there, and the kind of ideas that people have got, I mean, what this market will be in 5-7 years or 10 years is hugely underestimated.
Great point. So, and you've really got the whole thinking that where we are. We are now the fifth largest market in terms of market cap. We are all poised to become the third largest economy by the end of the, by the end of the decade, and hopefully a developed country by 2047. So, Sunil Bhaiya, which are the businesses themes which you think can really scale up large from here? I mean, I remember there was a time when IT was small, and it is now $250 billion industry, more than what the oil exports of Aramco are. What can really become large, mega, big if the economy grows?
So one is, I will take forward from where Navneet said. I think wealth and asset manager, I think still very, very minuscule. And this is a business where sustainably, at least, and visibly, you can see 25% growth, at least for the next 10-20 years. And 25% growth over 10 years is 10x. And if it lasts for 20 years, it is 100x. And it's such a good business. You don't need capital, you need intellectual capital. It is 100% cash conversion. So I think asset management companies, wealth management companies are going to be one of the biggest wealth creators. And frankly, at least for me, I can say that थोड़ा सा डर लगता है when you become an entrepreneur from a very, very large corporate executive and very comfortable life. But I am glad that I took the jump, and we can already see the traction which is there, and as the economy grows, I think people will become more wealthy. The acceptance towards, investing in financial assets is ever increasing. And there is a huge room to grow there. So I think that would be one. Second, I completely, definitely believe that we are going to move ahead towards becoming much larger in innovation, in setting the trends. There is one Zoho which has come out of India from a very, very small village. There will be hundreds more like that which can come out. Why can't there be a Netflix-like model which comes out of India, or an innovative TikTok or a Meta kind of a model? I think China also was like that. Now see the innovation which China has started to throw out. BYD is much larger than Tesla. TikTok is much larger than Reels and all. Obviously, countries are not happy with China, and therefore their companies are being suppressed. But I think some of these innovations, India will just surprise, because kids have the brains, they have the education. Now there is capital available. आप presentation बनाओ, सिर्फ presentation बनाओ और 4 दरवाजे पे जाओ, your fundraising will be oversubscribed by 10x. अभी इसके आने के पहले मैं कोई कंपनी से मिला, मेरे को कंपनी वाला क्या बोलता है, बोला मैं तो आपका सम्मान करता हूँ, इसके लिए आपको मिल रहा हूँ, मेरा तो फंडरेज सेट है, आपको इन्वेस्ट करना है तो मंडे तक मेरे को बता देना, नहीं तो मैं तो खाली आपके रिस्पेक्ट से आपको मिल रहा हूँ. So risk capital is available in plenty. And I think that is what you need. What do you need to, spur entrepreneurship? You need capital. You need guys who are competent and who have the brains to do it. So I think one is very clearly asset management companies. Second is innovation companies. I think pharma will surprise, because if companies start to go into creating innovation drugs, we have an investment in a company. कल परसों आए थे ऑफिस में. They sell something for $500 in the US. And I was asking him whether there is an opportunity in India. बोला नहीं है opportunity India में. बोला क्यों? बोले वो same चीज यहाँ 500 रुपए में बिकती है. Now imagine what they're selling at $500 is available here at 500. So that is the cost competitiveness which this country has. I think it's a matter of time before we just put to things. So I think rather than focusing on कि आज क्या है, I think keep your ears and eyes open. Just see your surroundings. I think if you could have just saw that we were opening more bank accounts in HDFC Bank 20 years back, you would have invested in HDFC. If you would have seen that kids are ordering more pizzas, you would have invested in Jubilant. If you are seeing that we are ordering from the restaurants, you would have invested in Zomato. Just keep your balance and see what is happening. You will automatically get tips every 15 days.
I'd invested in Nippon Mutual Fund. आप तो छोड़ के चल गए, अब क्या करूं?
नहीं, बट मैं छोड़ के चला गया, उससे क्या है? टैलेंट खत्म हो गया क्या? 140 करोड़ लोग हैं. जब सुनील गावस्कर गया ना, तब तेंदुलकर आया. तेंदुलकर गया तो कोहली आया. कोहली गया तो शुभनाम गिल आएगा. जो आया है वो पहले वाले से बेटर है. So I think it is not about one individual or someone else. I think what we are doing is basically creating a platform. We all grew up. I think when I joined Reliance Mutual Fund 35 करोड़ था. और Navneet ने बोला एक बिल्डिंग में there are so many foreign investors. Frankly, मीडिया भी है ना, कोई गोरा आता है ना, उसको 1 घंटे का टाइम देते हैं. हम जाते हैं ना तो 5 मिनट में, कल क्या लगता है, परसों क्या लगता है, ओके नाउ वी आर टेकिंग अ ब्रेक, गुड बाय. So I think that will also change. I think once scale and size increases, talent will automatically come. पहले jobs ही नहीं थे, अब jobs हैं तो talent भी आ रहा है. And I अभी सिद्धार्थ का presentation देख के मेरे को लगा हम तो outdated हो गए, उसने तो सब कुछ उसमें combine कर दिया. हम तो सब कुछ करते ही नहीं. So I think talent will come.
Bharat bhai, I think it's almost 1. Before we wrap, let's get final thoughts from you. Final thoughts from you.
In terms of overall. Looking at the sheer size of opportunity and the way it is going to be burgeoning, overflowering kind of opportunity. My real wish is if I were 10 or 15 years younger, that would have been a great joy. Investing, of course, can and does make you, good investing can make you rich and wealthy. Good investing can also get you good recognition all around. But I think while these are important, these are still incidental. The joy of creating wealth itself is a joy in itself, which is nothing to do with the money, nothing to do with the wealth being made. The opportunity to learn in investing is so multifold. There was this fantastic work by Richard Hexton. We talked about the latest work of different branches of knowledge, which so many branches of knowledge interact with each other to build a larger ecosystem of learning, which is what investing is all about. I think that sheer joy of learning in investing itself is a joy which can't be substituted. Navneet and Sunil both talked about great opportunity for asset management firms, the wealth management advisors, and it is so true. When we think about the largest industry in the world, which is money management, some $330 trillion of global industry, it's run by a handful of a million of people all over the world. That just shows investing is so special. I mean, not that I'm trying to earn a brownie points for the asset management industry or for the money managers per se, but it is a fact that money management is a special industry, special activity. And therefore, unless and until you have a cadre of good people who will take the things ahead and serve a very useful social context, because those limited number of people will create wealth for a lot of people and give a wing to their aspirations of what they want to achieve out of life. Finally, I would say that the intellectual gratification, getting ahead of the markets is never easy, and it requires best of the wits to be put together. Many times, even though markets may be generally staying ahead of you most of the times, that intellectual gratification that you get is a phenomenal one. And therefore, I think, to me, maybe it may sound like a gooey kind of a statement or more a philosophical statement, but I think investment management in its core is a dharma, a duty that you discharge. And when you do it well, not only you get it right, but do it right, it's a phenomenal high. This country offers unbelievable opportunity, unless something fundamental which has got us here goes out of the way. We have a huge opportunity. I think economy will grow. It will reflect into the growth of the turnover, the cash flows, the profits in a rising crescendo, which will reflect in the valuation of the businesses, along with the greater predictability, certainty, durability, solidity of the businesses. Valuation will further rise apart from the earnings growth. And finally, it will reflect in the wealth of the owners of these businesses as well as investors. Therefore, I think the whole investment activity, which is basically a great game at allocating capital in a most efficient channels of the country, most productive channels of the country, in a ruthless way, where you weed out bad things and you promote the good things, is the greatest value creation dharma, as well as, I think, a epithet, in my opinion. Therefore, this country, the businesses, the dynamism, the people, the talent, the growth opportunity, the society's character, and I think the whole market and the people and the investors, the entire ecosystem, to my mind, is one huge addictive high if you ever were to get it. So that's the way I look at it. And all of that is to combine to take this country to the crescendo.
Great. So with that, I think let's put our hand together for this lovely panel. I think जोश हाई है, होश में रहें, और short term, don't focus on the ups and the downs. The India story, the best is yet to come. Can I summarize like that?
निकुंज पे आपने कहा था लास्ट वर्ड मेरा होगा.
मैं रैप
आप
नहीं करा,
भूल गए.
रैप नहीं करा.
So एक रिक्वेस्ट है सबसे. ગુજરાતીમાં મકરંદ દવે કરીને એક કવિ હતા. એમની કવિતા હતી, ગમતું મળીએ તો ગુંજે ના ભરીએ, ગમતાનો કરીએ ગુલાલ. If God has been kind to you and you have got certain skills, don't use it for making money or opportunity for yourself. Share it with the world. हम लोग सब स्टॉक मार्केट से जुड़े हैं. हम लोग सब में मार्केट क्या करता है, कैसे चलता है, उसकी नॉलेज है. हमने सबने स्टॉक मार्केट में निवेश करके पैसा बनाया है. बट भारत में ऐसे बहुत सारे लोग हैं जो निवेश अभी भी नहीं कर पा रहे हैं. आरबीआई का डेटा है, FY 21 से 23 के बीच में हाउस होल्ड ऑफ इंडिया ने 4 लाख करोड़ रुपया म्यूचुअल फंड में दिया, 2 लाख करोड़ रुपया डायरेक्ट स्टॉक बॉन्ड्स डिबेंचर्स में दिया, और 9 लाख करोड़ करेंसी नोट में घर पे रखा है. बहुत सारे भारतीय बिलीव करते हैं कि करेंसी नोट घर में रखेंगे तो स्टॉक मार्केट से ज्यादा रिटर्न देंगे. किसी ने देखा नहीं है, बट लोग बिलीव करते हैं. तो आप सब अपना तो निवेश जरूर करना, बट बाकी जो लोग करेंसी नोट घर पे लेके बैठे हैं, उनका निवेश भी यहाँ पे लेके आना. गमतू मले तो गुंजे ना भरिए, गमता नो करिए गुलाल.